4, 3, 2, 1, go!
You blitz all night. And if they cross the line of scrimmage, I'm going to take every last one of you out.
Hey, the Blitz is coming, boys.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Blitz, where we give you the latest and greatest in fantasy football news, injury reports, advice, tips, and so much more in just 5 minutes or less. So if you haven't checked out the channel before, make sure that you're locked into the Fantasy's Finest podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts, on Apple, Spotify, or wherever else. And make sure that you're locked into our YouTube channel for the latest episodes so you don't want to miss a beat. In this episode, I gotta highlight some players that helped out my fantasy teams this week, and maybe they helped out yours if you managed to start them this week. And we also gotta cover a couple of injury news, because we have to make sure that we got guys that can play in our lineup. So we have a few players who have suffered some injuries. They may be out for a little bit, they may be out for a long time, and we have some guys coming back. So let's jump right into the episode and get you guys up to speed. Now, first off, 49ers wide receiver Deebo Samuels is expected to miss a few weeks behind a calf strain. So make sure that you have him out of your lineup. Wide receiver T. Higgins from the Cincinnati Bengals and tight end Jake Ferguson are expected or are trending in the right direction. So hopefully we get those two guys back in week 3. Higgins has been dealing with a hamstring injury, which forced him out of the first 2 weeks of the season. And Ferg messed himself up in week 1 against the Cleveland Browns, and he missed week 2 against the New Orleans Saints. And finally, Evan Ingram, Jaguars tight end, hurt himself during pregame warmups with a hamstring injury. He's considered week to week. Now, let's get to the nitty-gritty, because these are some guys that I wanted to highlight for their phenomenal fantasy performances in week 2. Starting off at the running back position, we got Devon Achane, James Cook, and Alvin Kamara. These three running backs put up major performances in week 2 and absolutely crushed it. Devon Achane, there was some trepidation about whether or not you should start him because Raheem Mostert was out. Achane was dealing with an ankle injury, and it was like, oh man, should I start him? But once news came out that he was going to lead the backfield, and when he made it through pregame warmups and played, man, you talk about a great performance. 29.5 fantasy points, used all over the place, out of the backfield, catching passes, running up the middle. He had a phenomenal performance. He showed that he can be a lead back if he gets that workload. James Cook, on the other hand, also had a great performance on that game in Thursday Night Football. 28.5 fantasy points in that game. 3 total touchdowns, 7.1 yards per attempt, 78 yards rushing. James Cook should be in your lineups almost every week, because Joe Brady is going to run the ball, and the Buffalo Bills are going to move as far as James Cook can take them. At the quarterback position, Kyler Murray and Derek Carr, yes, much to the chagrin of my Dallas Cowboys, and I almost forgot about Alvin Kamara, because he crushed my Cowboys with 4 touchdowns too. He's likely going to be your running back 1 for week 1, and yeah, that's all I'm going to say about that. I had the pleasure of starting him against my Cowboys, which it stung a little bit, but it had to be done because I need to win my fantasy week, and I hope you started him too. Now, going back to the quarterback position, Kyler Murray and Derek Carr put up great performances in week 2. Murray got back on track with Marvin Harrison Jr., who's also on this list, and he had a great performance. Just 21 attempts, but 17 of 21, 81% completion percentage, 266 yards passing, another 57 on the ground, 3 touchdowns through the air. This is why, if you waited for quarterbacks and you waited for Kyler Murray, this is the kind of performance that you were hoping to get when you drafted Kyler Murray late. 28.5 fantasy points on the week. Solid performance. Derek Carr, he also had a great performance against my Cowboys. Just 16 attempts, but he put up 243 yards. Big play machine throwing downfield. 2 touchdowns, 28.5 fantasy points in that game in week 2 against the Cowboys. He is phenomenal. And if you need a quarterback, he is available on the wire. Just going to throw that out there. He will be featured on our main podcast and our waiver wire episode. And finally, to wrap this episode up, Marvin Harrison Jr. finally got back on track with the Cardinals offense and Kyler Murray. 130 yards receiving, 2 touchdowns on 8 targets, 4 catches. He's likely going to be your wide receiver 1 for week 2. A great performance from the rookie. Glad to see it. And it kind of gets the angst off our backs because if you took Marvin Harrison high or at his ADP, you were kind of sweating it a little bit in week 1 when he only saw 4 targets. So great performance. Glad to see that back on track. And Marvin Harrison should be in your lineups moving forward because he's a machine. And the Cardinals offense looks much better with him as part of it than not at all. But that'll do it for this episode. Hopefully you guys check this out. Like and share. And make sure that you're subscribed to our podcast. We got more coming. So stay tuned and be locked in with the Fantasy Phinest and the Blitz.
Yo, come back now, yeah!